Hey everybody, I'm back. I know it's been a while, but here I am making another video talking about records, and this is a video that I've actually been thinking about for a very, very long time, but I finally got around to creating this top 10 list, and of course this is just my top 10 list. I'm sure your top 10 list would be quite different, but this top 10 list has to do with the top 10 double albums of all time, in my opinion. And this is a very, very hard task to do, but I think I've really, really narrowed it down. So first off, let me tell you what my requirements are for a double album. So the first requirement was that it has to be an album that was intended to be a double album, and it was a double album when it was first released. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for example, like the Beatles' White Album famously was intended to be a double album and was released as a double album in 1968. But then there are some modern albums or even some reissues that have been that were originally released as just a single LP or maybe just a single CD, but now in the age of vinyl, the new vinyl boom, vinyl coming back, they've released the album as a double album. Just because of like the time restraints for CDs and vinyl. So those albums I wasn't going to count. So like, for example, I have some Radiohead albums that I really, really love that are double albums on the vinyl format, but on CD they're just a single CD. So those didn't count. Also, for example, an album like All Things Must Pass by George Harrison, one of my all-time favorite albums. In fact, it's in my top 10 all-time albums, just single, double, or triple, or whatever. But since it's officially a triple album, I didn't include it in this double album list. And while you could argue that even though it's a triple album, it really only has a double album's worth of actual songs, with the third LP just a jam, I didn't want to include it in the list because technically it's not a double album. So, there you go. Those are just some of my requirements for this top 10 list, but let's get right into this. And of course, before I start, just so you all know, by the way, I move my hands a lot, I realize that, but before I start, this is just my opinion. These are my favorite double albums, my top 10 list double albums. I would love to know in the comments below what your top 10 list would look like. So please, comments below, let me know what your top 10 list would be, and let me know if I've left out any very, very important ones, because maybe I have. Here we go. Number 10. This is the Allman Brothers album Eat a Peach. Now, Eat a Peach is just one of those classic albums that you just can't overlook this album. This is arguably probably my favorite album that the Allman Brothers ever released. And it's an interesting album in that it features a live cut that actually is a live jam. It's a jam of a Donovan song called Mountain Jam. And it occupies two sides of this double album. And while I don't absolutely love it, I would never put it in my top 10 Allman Brothers songs or anything like that, it's an essential part of this album, Eat a Peach. And one of the cool things, of course, about double albums is that they usually have a very, very cool gatefold, and this one is no exception. It's got a very, very cool drawing in here that I've always really, really liked. It's fun to look at while you're listening to the actual album. And for those of you who maybe are wondering, why does this video look a little bit different? Well, I'm filming this in the evening, and I almost never do that. And I also have a light going right now, which I almost never use either. I usually just use natural light. So if it looks a little bit different to you, it's because it's in the evening, and I just wanted to really show off some of these wonderful gatefolds here. So this is Eat a Peach, and just a really, really, really great album. And it's also the last album that features the amazing guitar playing of Duane Allman, because of course he passed away right before this album came out. I think that's what happened. But I do know this is the last album that he was featured on. So just a really, really brilliant, brilliant album, and my number 10 favorite double album. Okay, moving on here. Number 9. This is a record that blew me away when I first heard it. I first heard it from my dad's record collection. This is Elton John's album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and it is just packed full of some of the best songwriting, some of the best performances you'll ever hear. It's got so many classic songs. Probably the most well-known songs on here are like Benny and the Jets, Candle in the Wind, of course, which is probably the most overplayed song of all time. The title track, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, is amazing, and it has my all-time favorite Elton John song on here, a song called Harmony, which is the very last song on side 4 of the record. And it's just a brilliant song, but the album just plays through from start to finish. It's so fantastic. Like I said, every song, absolutely amazing. Funeral for a Friend, which opens the album and leads right into Love Lies Bleeding. Some of the best music, honestly, you will ever hear. And arguably one of the best albums from the 1970s. And it just so happens to be a double album. And this one has a cool gatefold in that it opens up with 3 panels instead of the usual 2 that you would have in a double album. But just a fantastic record and one of my all-time favorites. So number 9, Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Okay, number 8. This is probably one of my most controversial picks, I would say, on this list. But it is just one of my all-time favorites. This is the double album by Fleetwood Mac called Tusk. And this was released in 1979. And it is definitely their most experimental album, especially with their lineup of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie. It was really Lindsey Buckingham's brainchild, really, this album. And it was his attempt to make something completely different to their previous album, which was their album Rumors, which is arguably their best album and their best known album, their best selling album. But when they went back in the studio, he wanted to make something totally different. And Tusk is something totally different. It's got a lot of new wave influences on it. And it's just a very interesting, weird record that I have always loved. It's got some of my favorite songs that Lindsey Buckingham ever performed with Fleetwood Mac, including Save Me a Place, let's see, That's All for Everyone, Walk a Thin Line, the title track Tusk. Those are some Lindsey songs that I really love. It's also got some of my favorite Stevie Nicks songs, including Sarah, Storms, Angel, Beautiful Child. Great songs. And of course, not to forget Christine McVie. She has some great songs on here as well, including Over and Over, Think About Me, and Honey High is amazing. But this is just a really great record, and one of my all-time favorite albums by anyone, to be perfectly honest with you. So Tusk by Fleetwood Mac is my number 8. Okay, number 7. This is from the mighty Led Zeppelin, and this is their double album, Physical Graffiti. And of course, these are all double albums that I'm talking about. But this is Physical Graffiti. This was released in 1975. And this, I will go on record and I will just say this. This is my favorite Led Zeppelin album. I've always loved Physical Graffiti, not just because it's a double album, but it just plays perfectly, in my opinion, from start to finish. It has everything you could ever want in a Led Zeppelin album. It's got the heavy rockers. It's got the upbeat kind of funky tunes. It's got some great acoustic songs. And it's got some fantastic, long, like jamming blues type songs on here. It's just got it all. And the sound quality is top notch. I love the drumming from John Bonham. I love the drumming from John Bonham on every single Led Zeppelin album. But I think it's my favorite on this one. Just some amazing songs. And it has one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs, Houses of the Holy, which of course is the title of their album they released before this, called Houses of the Holy. But they didn't put that song on that album. They saved it for this album, which is a little bit confusing. But Houses of the Holy has always been one of my favorite songs by Led Zeppelin, and another one of my favorite songs is also on this album called Trampled Underfoot. Just absolutely brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So Physical Graffiti is, I hold it in high regard and definitely one of my favorite double albums of all time. Okay, next up, so let's see. Let me do some counting here because I'm losing track. We have 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, number 6. This is the Jimi Hendrix Experience's album Electric Ladyland. Now, this is just, from start to finish, much like all of these albums, but really when it comes to this one, absolutely brilliant. And this is my favorite Jimi Hendrix album. It's so experimental, it's so powerful, and in my opinion, this is just pure Jimi at his absolute best. And it's got amazing songs. Some of my all-time favorite Jimi Hendrix songs, including The Long Jam, Voodoo Child. It's got Crosstown Traffic, which I love. It's got the title track, Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland? It's got so many great long jams, including let's see. I'm drawing a blank here. Burning the Midnight Lamp. Let's see. Rainy Day, Dream Away. Still Raining, Still Dreaming. It's full of excellent songs. And of course, it has arguably two of his most famous songs. The Bob Dylan cover of All Along the Watchtower is on this record. And his amazing song, Voodoo Child, Slight Return, also on here. So it's just got everything you could ever want when it comes to Jimi Hendrix, in my opinion. Such an amazing record, and I'll show you the gatefold, by the way, because it has a great gatefold, featuring mini photos by Linda Eastman, who would, of course, go on to marry Paul McCartney and become Linda McCartney. But, yeah, really a fantastic record. And by the way, this is a modern pressing of it that I think sounds great. This is from 2010. This is the Legacy edition, and it sounds wonderful. And you can find this for a good price in pretty much any Barnes & Noble or modern day record store. They have these, so worth checking out for sure. Electric Ladyland. Okay, we've hit the middle of the list here. So number 5. This is an album by the Rolling Stones called Exile on Main Street, and it is, like all these albums, just amazing. Now, this is an album that the Stones themselves are a little bit divided on. So Keith, of course, loves this record and has gone on record saying, I think he said it's one of his favorite Stones albums. Mick, of course, Mick Jagger, he's got a little bit of a different opinion about the album, but I tend to side with Keith in thinking that it's probably one of the Stones' best albums. It's hard for me to choose between this one and Sticky Fingers. Both are just top notch, but a lot of times when I want to listen to the Rolling Stones, I'll put on Exile on Main Street just because every single song is fantastic. I love the rawness of it. Of course, they famously recorded a lot of the basic tracks in France. They were tax exiles at the time. So Keith had a mansion in France where they recorded a lot of the backing tracks. Then they took a lot of those tracks to LA, like Sunset Sound, and added a lot of overdubs, like vocal overdubs and horn parts and stuff like that. But it's just a fantastic record and an all-time classic double album. I just love it so much. So the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, is my number 5. Number 4. This is an album that absolutely changed my life in so many ways. Mainly, it changed the way I looked at guitar playing. It's got two of my favorite guitar players of all time on it. You have Eric Clapton, of course, and it also you have Duane Allman. And those two together are pretty much the best guitar duo ever recorded, in my opinion. And I say that as I look at Exile on Main Street, because you also had Mick Taylor and Keith Richards, who are also two of my favorite guitar players. But this album just, it has the playing and it has the songs. It's got it all. It's just a perfect album, in my opinion. And here's the gatefold. I've always loved this gatefold as well. All these cool Polaroid pictures. And that's a thing I should really talk about too, by the way, with double albums. Most of the time with double albums, there's always a great gatefold, and it's always so many great visual things to look at. And I really like that a lot. And this album has that for sure. And this one, it's just got some of my all-time favorite Eric Clapton songs, including I Looked Away, Bell Bottom Blues, Keep On Growing, Any Day. Why Does Love Got to Be So Sad is amazing. It's got a great cover of Jimi Hendrix's song Little Wing on here. And of course, the title track, Layla, is just absolutely epic and just fantastic. So, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs by Derek and the Dominoes is just arguably one of the greatest double albums ever released. So, there you go. Now, we're getting into the top three. Number 3. And this is when it got very hard for me, by the way. These were all tough to pick and put in order, but the top 3 was very, very hard. But coming in at number 3, you have Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. And this, like Layla, this changed my life, this album. This blew me away. I was in high school when I first heard this, and I couldn't believe how many great songs were on a single album. I also couldn't believe how many of these songs I already knew without ever having listened to this album. Couldn't also believe how many songs had been sampled in hip-hop songs much later, or even just songs that I heard in like commercials and stuff like that. Just a very, very, very obviously influential album, and it just knocked me off my feet. There's a song on here called Knocks Me Off My Feet, but it's got, well, every song in here, by the way, is fantastic, but it's got so many songs that I just absolutely worship. Love's in Need of Love Today is the first song on the album, and it's amazing. Sir Duke, maybe one of the best songs ever written. I Wish is amazing, knocks me off my feet, like I talked about. Pastime Paradise is fantastic. Summer Soft, Ordinary Pain. By the way, let me just stop right there. Side 2 of this album is perfect. Let me just read this off to you. I Wish, Knocks Me Off My Feet, Pastime Paradise, Summer Soft, and Ordinary Pain. That's you. I don't know if you can do better than that. That's an amazing lineup of songs. Then you have Isn't She Lovely, which is of course probably the best known song from this album. Joy Inside My Tears is great. If It's Magic is so great. The song As is amazing, and Another Star. And then you also get a bonus EP with this. And I know that's kind of breaking the rules a little bit of my double album thing, but technically you're getting 2 albums and an EP. So it's a double album with a bonus EP. So we're going to let it count. Songs in the Key of Life, though, it's just brilliant. And Stevie Wonder has so many great albums, but I think this is my favorite Stevie Wonder album. So number 3, Songs in the Key of Life. Here's where it gets so hard, but you probably can guess what my next 2 are going to be. Coming in at number 2, we have Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan, and much like I just talked about with Songs in the Key of Life and Layla, this album, even more than those last 2, which is hard to believe, this album absolutely changed my life. And I remember the first time I heard this was on CD. I bought the CD, and I listened to it nonstop, I think for like 2 years. I'm not even kidding. I couldn't get enough of Blonde on Blonde. It was obviously lyrically mind-blowing, but also just the overall sound of this album is, and Dylan described it best. He said it's that wild, thin Mercury sound, and that is so the perfect description of how it sounds. It's this electric, wild, just weird, like sounds like all the songs were made at like 3 a.m. And that's not my quote, by the way. I think I read that quote in one of the Bob Dylan books, but it's such a great description of how the songs feel. It sounds like they were all recorded late at night, early in the morning, and it's just, in my opinion, Dylan's absolute masterpiece. And he's got a lot, by the way. But if I had to pick one Dylan album, I would choose Blonde on Blonde. It has arguably my favorite Dylan song, which is Visions of Joanna. And that's saying a lot because I have a lot of favorite Dylan songs, but I think Visions of Joanna is just got to be my favorite song. It's got so many lines in it that are absolutely brilliant. It has maybe my favorite Dylan line ever, which is "The ghost of electricity howls in the bones of her face." And just think about that line and get back to me, because that is probably the most perfect lyric I've ever heard in my life. It'll leave you cold in your tracks. It's such a great lyric. But I can't say enough about this album, and it's got an interesting gatefold there on the front, because you get Dylan full shot there, and it's a blurry shot. Then you get the gatefold, which is like that, and on. This is by the way the mono Sundazed reissue, which sounds amazing, by the way. But there are early stereo pressings that have a different photo right here, which is of a French actress named like Claudette something, I think. But I do have that in here as well. But I decided to choose the mono version because I think I prefer the mono mix of this, actually. But just a great record and one of my all-time favorites. So Bob Dylan, Blonde on Blonde. And I'm sure you can all guess what my number one is going to be. Yes, it is the Beatles' White Album. The White Album, what can I say about the White Album that I haven't already said in probably 20 of my other videos? But I absolutely love the White Album, obviously. And the Beatles, when you think about a double album, you think about the White Album, in my opinion. It is the double album. It's the Beatles, so every single song is great, and every single song matters on this album. Sure, you got some of the weirder songs like Wild Honey Pie and the Sound Collage Revolution 9, and a lightweight song like Good Night, but they all work within the context of this double album. And it's the Beatles, and you can't go wrong with the White Album. This is an album I can put on any time of day, with any of my friends, with my wife, with my parents, with my nieces who are very, very young, like 3 and 1. And all those people will enjoy the White Album. It's got something for everyone, and it's just the double album. So what more can I say? This happens to be the German pressing, stereo pressing of the album, released in, I believe it's 1973, 72, 73, something like that. But it is one of my favorite pressings of the White Album. So that is my top 10 list for double albums. And let me know in the comments below what you think about my top 10 list. Let me know what your top 10 would be. And hey, that's it. I do have some honorable mentions, by the way. I should mention that the Beach Boys album Smile would have been in this top 10 list because it's one of my all-time favorite albums. But I didn't put it in here because it was never officially released in the 1960s when it was supposed to be released. So we don't know technically if it would have been a double album or not. I think it would have been. It was re-released, or not re-released. It was officially released in its unfinished form in the 2000s, I think about 10 years ago now, I think. And I do have that on vinyl, and it is a double album. But it actually technically only fills 3 sides. But I wanted to give it an honorable mention because it is a fantastic record that I love. Another honorable mention double album that I really, really love is an album that was intended to be a double album, but then was released as a single album. and it's an album by Paul McCartney and Wings. It's their Red Rose Speedway album. And of course, when it was released in 1973, it was released as a single album. But then about 3 or 4 years ago, they finally put it out, its original intended double album version, which I absolutely love. But like I said, I didn't include it in this list because it wasn't originally released as a double album, so I didn't want to count it. If you hear some weird noises, it's my cat Bobby over here. He's scratching on his scratch pad. So those were just 2 honorable mentions for double albums that I didn't include. But again, let me know in the comments below some of your favorite double albums. And here's Bobby to say hello at the last second. And hey, that's it for now. I will be making more videos. Don't worry. As some of you probably have already seen, or you found out for yourselves, or maybe you're finding out right now when I tell you, my website, needlemeetsfinal.com, it's currently on hold. I just had to put on hold for a while. I have other things going on in my life. Most importantly, I'm working on a bunch of new music with my band Anchor and Bear. We're recording a lot, and we're getting ready to play a bunch of live shows this summer, which we're very, very excited about. So we've been getting that together, getting the recordings together, and I just haven't had as much time to devote to the website as I would like, and I don't want to do it unless I'm doing it 100%. So it might be back in the future, it might not, but I will be making videos as much as I can whenever something kind of strikes me, like this idea about the top 10 double albums. But hey, I appreciate all of you so much for checking out my videos and always supporting me over the years, and hope you're all doing well, and stay tuned for more videos. So that's it. Take care, and bye for now.